welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I have pulled out my trusty little swatch book to take another look at the Schmincke super granulating dot chart that I bought a while ago from Jackson's Art. Today we're going to be looking at the fourth set on this chart of 8, which is the Shire set. I'm sure that this is going to consist of a lot of greens. Green is not necessarily my favorite color, but we're going to have fun with this anyways. So let's get into it. So the first one is Shire Yellow, and it is a 2 pigment color. It is Pigment Yellow 159 and Pigment Violet 62. So I had difficulties trying to re-wet this, and no matter how hard I tried, the color came out very pale and thin, and I had some problems with this when I was swatching out the Volcano set and the Pigment 159, the Volcano Yellow, one of their only 2 single pigment super granulating colors, I suspect might be the culprit here. I have heard that if you have the tube, it is quite a vibrant color and you have no problems with it, but I find that on these little dot charts it's just quite difficult to reactivate and work with. But here is the yellow. There is some color separation, as you can see, starting to show up here, although it doesn't really look like a yellow and a violet. It looks like a yellow and a greeny brown. My first impressions were that this was not really a yellow, but compared to the other ones in the set, it is pretty yellow, I suppose. It's like a muted, desaturated, dusky yellow. Once dry, you can definitely see pops of yellow that are more intense, and then other parts that are just sort of darker and more browny. Okay, moving on to Shire Olive, also a 2 pigment color, and it also has Pigment Yellow 159 and Pigment Blue 35. So this one too was a little bit difficult to re-wet from the dot. I'm pretty sure that it is the Pigment Yellow 159, but I only have these little dots to test with. When first swatching it out in its initial stage here, it kind of reminded me of like fresh spring green peas or something like that. It just had a lively, pretty, soft green to it. It's quite thin and washy. As it dries, you can start to see, of course, some of the separation. That pigment yellow does seem to separate, and you get those pops of yellow in there. It's much more desaturated and pale once dry, I feel, than it was when I was first swatching it. Okay, the third one is Shire Green, which is kind of funny because they sort of all seem greeny to me. But this one is a 2 pigment color, Pigment Yellow 159 again, and Pigment Green 18, which I think is Viridian, but we'll look at that in a minute. And again, when I first was trying to reactivate it, it just felt a little bit thin to me. It could be the nature of this set of paints, that they're just sort of a softer, washier color, but it also could be the fact that my dot chart seems to be difficult when it comes to anything to do with the Pigment Yellow 159. And again, this is a really nice, bright, fresh, springy green feeling. Now that I have swatched the two together, this definitely feels brighter and springier compared to the olive, which at the time I thought was bright, but compared to this one, as you can see, is it's quite more yellow. You can almost instantly see some of the separation between the green and the yellow when I'm first swatching it. So the color separation is quite strong, but not too distracting, as the yellow and green are not too far apart. And then of course, as it dries, you see separation even more intensely between the yellow and that green. The green almost looks blue at this point. Okay, moving on to the fourth one, Shire Blue. Pigment Yellow 159, Pigment Blue 29, and Pigment Green 26. Again, I felt like I was having a hard time re-wetting this one. It's kind of a common theme with this entire set, but this entire set had that Pigment 159 in this dried dot chart form. It could be just me. I could have gotten a bad chart. So although this color wouldn't necessarily be considered a blue on its own, it definitely is bluer than all the other colors in this set. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Daniel Smith's Cascade Green. I'm not sure offhand what pigments are in that color, but it sort of has that same bluey greeny feel that paint has. Again, you can see almost right away a separation between some of the pigment in its wet form, and then as it dries, the granulation really comes out and you can see more of that separation between some of the pigments. I almost could see this working with the Deep Sea set too, actually. Okay, last one in the set, Shire Gray. Again, 3 pigments. Again, Pigment Yellow 159. Also Pigment Blue 74 and Pigment Black 11. Trying to get as much pigment off that little dot as I possibly can. So initially this just goes down as a really nice, soft, light gray. You can see granulation right away. You can't really see the color separation yet. Trying to push around the pigments as much as I can to try to get a good idea of what the color separation and granulation will look like once it dries. As it's drying, you do start to see some of the color separation. It's very subtle, but it is there, and of course the granulation pops out quite nicely. Overall, I think it's a really nice gray color. Great for shadows, I think. Okay, time for pigment breakdown. Now the first thing I'm going to point out is that every single one of the colors in this set has the Pigment Yellow 159, which is the volcano yellow. So if these are colors that you enjoy and you want to try mixing your own, that might be a pigment that you want to buy. I would recommend buying the tube, but I just prefer having the tube paint when you want that really saturated, fresh paint. sort of color, that's kind of the way to do it, in my opinion. So yeah, so Shire Yellow has that Pigment Yellow 159, Volcano Yellow, and Pigment Violet 62, which we've seen a couple times. We saw it in Volcano Violet, and Deep Sea Indigo, oh, and Galaxy Brown. I knew there was another one. So Pigment Violet 62 is Cobalt Violet Hue, which is a really nice granulating neutral violet color. It's the granulation in this one is very, very fine. It's not really big and chunky granulating. The particles are very fine, but it does still granulate. I wonder if I can get closer for you. There's a closer look at the Cobalt Violet Hue 62, so you can see how the granulation is very fine and delicate, but it is very lovely. So this is not a very vibrant, bright yellow, as you could imagine, because yellow and purple are opposite on the color wheels. So when you mix yellow and purple together, they do cancel each other out or desaturate each other. So this is a very desaturated yellow color. So you know what, this kind of reminds me of sort of seeing wheat fields. You know, it's kind of that dry, greeny yellow, plant life yellow. That's the that's the color I think of, or that's what I envision when I think of that color. Going on to Shire Olive. This isn't necessarily what I would call an olive green, but it is a very nice green. And again, we've got the Pigment Yellow 159, the Volcano Yellow, and Pigment Blue 35. And Pigment Blue 35 is Cobalt Azure, which is, it's not too dissimilar from the Cobalt Violet in that it granulates, but the granulation is very, very fine. It seems like the pigment, the 159, it seems like it's maybe a heavier pigment than a lot of the other ones. Although the other two pigments that we looked at, they are very finely ground, so I guess it's not really a surprise that they would sort of disperse out further and then the yellow would set in deeper. Okay, looking at Shire Green. This again has the Volcano Yellow. Like I said, they all do. And it also has Pigment Green 18, which I'm pretty sure is Viridian. We've seen it a few times already. So there's the Volcano Yellow. There's the Viridian Green. I guess I'd say that's a neutral green, maybe a touch on the cool side. So this green is sort of the most vibrant of the greens, and it's most likely because of the Viridian, which is a pretty vibrant color on its own. And again, we can see big splotches of the yellow pigment there. Okay, moving on to Shire Blue. Shire Blue, it does look a little bit more blue now. Especially when I compare it to the other greens, but it still reads more aqua to me than an actual blue. But it does have, it has the Volcano Yellow, and it has Pigment Blue 29, which is French Ultramarine, and Pigment Green 26, which is, oh, there it is. It is Cobalt Green Dark. I feel like this was in one of the other super granulating colors. It's very, very dark. It has a very fine pigmentation, like a very, it granulates, but again, the pigmentation is very finely ground. I don't know if I'm using the right words to describe that, but if you compare it to something like Mars Black, where you can see that the pigments, the granulation, the chunks is much bigger than in the other one. So I don't know what the right words are for that, but there you go. The last one in the Shire set is Shire Gray, which is actually, it's a very lovely, cool gray, actually. I can see this being used as a nice shadow or shadow mixing color in a lot of different situations, actually. So it's got yellow, blue, and black, so we know that the yellow is a Volcano Yellow. Pigment Blue 74 is Cobalt Blue Deep, which is a very lovely color. And then Pigment Black 11, which we have seen a few times in quite a few of the haze colors, and it is Mars Black. This same pigment, this Pigment Black 11 shows up in a lot of different manufacturers' colors, usually granulating. Sometimes it goes by the name Lunar Black. But that is the Shire set of colors from my little dot chart that I have here that I've been swatching away. As you can see, it is very green and yellow based, particularly yellow with all of that pigment Y159 in there. What would be nice is someday to have a bigger sample where I can actually test out things like tinting strength or staining, dispersion. But for now, these little dots to add into my book are going to have to do the trick. And there you go. There is the Shire set of super granulating watercolors. Although this set is a little bit weak for my own personal tastes, it is still quite lovely. I definitely can see fields and forests in these colors. Again, I suspect if you actually had the tubes of these colors and not just these tiny little dots to experiment with, you could probably get some much more saturated colors and probably a greater range of what the colors can do. But there we have it. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like these kind of videos, please consider subscribing. There will be more. We are only halfway through this dot chart, and this is only one of many things that I want to experiment and swatch out for you guys. So until the next one, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.